From the headquarters of the American Radio Relay League in Newington, Connecticut, this is ARRL Audio News for Friday, April 28, 2017. This program is produced by the ARRL, the National Association for Amateur Radio, and features news highlights compiled from the ARRL letter, found on the web at arrl.org. I'm Sean Kutzko, KX9X.
And I'm your co-host, Carla Pereira.
In this week's report, the inaugural AM rally is deemed a success.
Armed Forces Day crossband communications test set for Saturday, May 13th.
And the WRTC 2018 plans call for greater participation by young contesters.
These stories and others, plus Bruce Page, KK5DO, with this week's satellite update, all coming up now.
Hi, I'm ARRL member Matthew Mitchin, AE8MM of Cuyahoga Falls, Ohio, and you're listening to ARRL Audio News.
The numbers are in, and the first AM rally, last April 1st through 3rd, was a huge success, with nearly 1,500 contacts reported on the 72 logs submitted. Unique call signs logged numbered 664. Event co-organizer Clark Burgard, N1BCG, feels the actual number of contacts was quite a bit larger because not all participants submitted logs, although logs continue to trickle in past the entry deadline. Burgard said he's been hearing a lot of newcomers on AM lately, and he believes the AM rally is a factor. Burkhardt said that several AM big guns anchored throughout the bands greeted newcomers and helped all to make some easy contacts. The top stations in terms of total contacts were W1AW at ARRL headquarters in Connecticut, and Steve Cloutier, WA1QIX, and Stephen Harris, KB1VWC, both in Massachusetts. W1AW and Cloutier, an AM rally co-organizer with Burgard and others, are ineligible to receive certificates, however. W1AW logged 178 contacts in 29 states, while WA1QIX made 138 contacts in 26 states. KB1VWC snagged 132 contacts in 28 states. Considering the solar flare, which wiped out the bands for a significant portion of the event, it was an amazing turnout, Cloutier told ARRL. For the future, it would be good to have the event in February, better propagation and less static, and a good thing to cure cabin fever. 3 special event stations, N1A, W1G, and W2A, were also active during the AM rally. Some 44% of contacts were made on 75 meters, with 40 meters a close second at 40% and 20 meters at 13%. Few people reported making contacts on 160 or 15 meters, and none were reported on 10 meters, likely due to poor HF conditions that weekend. Fewer than 1% made contacts on 6 meters. Burgard said he hopes the AM rally will turn into an annual event with even greater participation now that it's left so many positive experiences in its wake.
U.S. Army, Air Force, Navy, and Coast Guard stations will participate in the annual Armed Forces Day crossband communications test on Saturday, May 13th. This annual HF communication interoperability event, sponsored by the Department of Defense since 1934, challenges amateur radio operators to contact military stations across the U.S. The event marks the 66th annual Armed Forces Day, officially on May 20th. The crossband military amateur radio event takes place a week earlier in order to avoid schedule conflicts with those attending Hamvention in Ohio. Radio amateurs transmit on amateur radio frequencies and listen on military frequencies, while military stations transmit on military frequencies and listen on amateur radio frequencies. The annual event tests two-way communication between radio amateurs and military stations, authorized under FCC Part 97 rules. In addition, military stations and amateur radio stations are authorized to communicate directly on certain 60-meter interoperability channels, 5330.5, 5346.5, and 5371.5 kilohertz. Shortwave listeners are welcome to participate. Complete details, including stations, times, and operating modes, are on the U.S. Army Mars website.
Radio amateurs in Puerto Rico took part in the Caribe Wave Tsunami exercise on March 21st during Tsunami Preparedness Week for Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands. Caribe Wave is the annual tsunami exercise of the UNESCO Tsunami and Other Coastal Hazards Warning System for the Caribbean and adjacent regions. Its major objective is for countries, emergency managers, and communities at risk to test, validate, and update their tsunami response plans. This year's scenario was an earthquake with an epicenter at the east of the island of Antigua, generating a tsunami incident for the entire Caribbean. Exercise information can be found on the Tsunami Zone website. In Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands, Carib Wave is conducted in coordination with the Puerto Rico Seismic Network, UNESCO, NOAA, and the Puerto Rico Emergency Management Agency. Historically, amateur radio has been an important part of this exercise at an island-wide level, with various island radio groups participating on an array of VHF, UHF, and HF frequencies.
Online, via podcast, and on repeaters around the world, you're listening to ARRL Audio News.
Now, with this week's satellite update, here's Bruce Page, KK5DO.
Look for a group of hams from the Cam Hams Club on the sideband satellites for stateside from the Scottish Isle of Islay from May 6th through the 13th. It is grid square IO65 for you grid chasers. The call sign will be GS3PYE/P. Not far off, on May 20 through the 21st, the Great South Bay Arc will be operating W2GSB/APM on the satellites from the American Air Power Museum. And do not forget, Field Day is drawing near, and AMSAT has Field Day on the satellites during the same time as the ARRL Field Day. Start thinking about your gear now and prepare early. There are many sideband and CW satellites to choose from, and this year should have the most satellite participation in a long time. This is Bruce Page, KK5DO, for the ARRL Audio News.
The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service appears open to a de-expedition to Baker Island in the Pacific, which has not been activated for 15 years. Baker and Howland Islands, KH1, is the fourth most wanted DXCC entity, according to the Club Log DXCC Most Wanted list. On April 24th, the FWS released a draft compatibility determination for amateur radio operation for public review and comment. The comment period ends on May 8th. Public access to the Baker Island National Wildlife Refuge is managed through a Special Use Permit, or SUP. Amateur radio operation is an existing use at Baker Island National Wildlife Refuge. However, it is not a common use, the FWS said in opening the draft compatibility determination for comment. The service last permitted an amateur radio operator group to access Baker Island NWR in April 2002. The SUP authorizing this use will include stipulations, conditions, and restrictions to ensure compatibility and mitigate for potential anticipated impacts to refuge resources. The FWS allowed that while amateur radio is not a wildlife-dependent public use, it does offer some value as a source of public information about wildlife resources and to bring attention to the refuge, the FWS said. Baker Island is 1,830 nautical miles southwest of Honolulu, an 8-day voyage. Comments may be submitted via email to Monument Superintendent Laura Beauregard. Include Baker Amateur Radio comments in the subject line.
End-fed antennas is the topic of the latest episode of the ARRL The Doctor Is In podcast. Sponsored by DX Engineering, ARRL The Doctor Is In is an informative discussion of all things technical. Listen on your computer, tablet, or smartphone, whenever and wherever you like. Every 2 weeks, your host, QST Editor-in-Chief Steve Ford, WBA at IMY, and the doctor himself, Joel Hallis, W1ZR, will discuss a broad range of technical topics. You can also email your questions to doctor@arrl.org, and the doctor may answer them in a future podcast. Enjoy ARRL The Doctor Is In on Apple iTunes or by using your iPhone or iPad podcast app. You can also listen online at Blueberry or at Stitcher, and through the free Stitcher app for iOS, Kindle, or Android devices.
An international amateur radio team has postponed its de-expedition to the Spratly Islands, planned for December 2017. The de-expedition, which will take place from Layang Layang Island, under Malaysian call sign 9M0W, now will be on the air March 10 through 20th, 2018. Operation will be on 160 through 6 meters, CW, SSB, and digital modes. Layang Layang Island is approximately 15 acres, which includes reclaimed land, while the Royal Malaysian Navy maintains a presence on the reef. Ownership, as well as with all of the Spratlys, is disputed. It is also claimed by the People's Republic of China, Taiwan, and Vietnam.
Hi, I'm ARRL member Jim Idelson, K1IR, of Sudbury, Massachusetts, and you're listening to ARRL Audio News.
And finally, the 8th World Radio Sport Team Championship, WRTC 2018, in Germany next July will offer seats on 3 teams for contesters who are 25 or younger at the time of the event. Prospective participants need only to apply. The international event, July 12th through the 16th, 2018, will feature 42 competing teams. This will mark Germany's first time hosting WRTC, which takes place in conjunction with the IARU HF Championship event. Contester Sandy Raker, DL1QQ, who handles WRTC 2018 U.S. fundraising, spoke recently with Tim Duffy, K3LR, for a DX Engineering video. "I think we're making good progress," Raker said. She noted that WRTC 2014 in New England had 1 youth team. "We decided to have 3 youth teams this time because it's so important to involve young people in this great contesting hobby," Raker said. Managing preparations for WRTC 2018 is a 12-member organizing committee headed by Chris Jansen, DL1MGB. Raker said the sites, all in the relatively flat Jensen-Wittenberg region south of Berlin in the former East Germany, have yet to be evaluated, but added that organizers aim to offer comparable operating sites for all WRTC 2018 participants. WRTC 2018 has wrapped up its qualification process, drafted official rules for the competition, selected 160 possible station sites, picked and tested antennas and antenna-related gear, completed an initial round of testing, and signed several major sponsorship contracts. In March, WRTC 2018 began accepting applications for referees. Raker said some 39% of contributions for WRTC 2018 to date have come from the U.S., with 56% from Germany. U.S. supporters may donate to WRTC 2018 via the Worldwide Radio Operators Foundation website.
That concludes ARRL Audio News for this week. Our thanks to all contributors to this week's report. ARRL Audio News is produced by the American Radio Relay League, the National Association for Amateur Radio. For more information on amateur radio or the ARRL, visit us on the web at arrl.org. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram by searching for ARRL. If you have a question or comment about ARRL Audio News, email us at audionews@arrl.org. This program is copyright 2017 ARRL, all rights reserved. Until next week, I'm Carla Pereira.
And I'm Sean Kutzko, KX9X 73, and thanks for listening.